Welcome to Redeeming Missions, an every home podcast where we explore the heart of what it means to carry Christ to our world. I'm Tanner Peake, and I'm so glad that you're joining me today. Welcome to another episode of Redeeming Missions. I'm sitting here in Warsaw, Poland, with a friend, a coworker, co-minister, Anatoliy. He's coming from Ukraine. This is going to be just an awesome conversation. I believe it. I don't know what we're going to talk about fully, but it always seems to work out. But Anatoliy, thank you for making the journey to meet me here, to meet us here, and just to have conversation about what God is doing, what life is like in Ukraine, and just whatever else we end up talking about. So thank you for being on.
Thank you, Tanner, for inviting. It's a privilege. I always remember those days when we just first met, and it was in Kiev.
That's right.
And you were just new in EHC, and we had an opportunity to meet with Andre. And
that's right.
I always remember those moments.
Yeah,
so thank you for that. We have this privilege now a few years later.
That's right. You used to have hair, and my hair used to be brown. Yeah. So I think we're looking good.
We're trying.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. We are trying. Well, start out. I think the way we always start out is we ask you your story, and I think you just should feel free to just share whatever you feel like comes to your mind. But think of a 5-10 minute. If somebody had 5 to 10 minutes to learn about Anatoliy, what would they need to know from you?
Okay, so I was born in a Christian home, evangelistic family. In a long time ago, back in 73, Brezhnev was still alive. I remember when Brezhnev died. But I grew up in an antagonistic environment because we were evangelicals and we were persecuted, we were shunned. My grandparents were really persecuted, my parents were persecuted. I was more shunned, like on Mondays, school meeting when all the classes would be put in formation. Director of the school would say, and we saw Anatoliy go to church to a neighboring village, and it was supposed to be a clue for other students to really dislike Anatoliy. But under pressure, I learned to just get tougher, like concrete under pressure. So I was thinking, okay, so you don't like me going to church because you saw me going to church. So then I would go to church with a big family Bible in my hand, and I would hold it like this. Like
you're an antagonizer.
Yeah, you don't like me going to church, now watch this. So I would be going with the Bible. So growing up in Christian home was a privilege. It was difficult. You didn't claim to be Christian just for the fun of it. It gave you no status. It gave you a low status. So now all of that is changed in Ukraine, but this is what I grew up in. And I couldn't go to university even though I was excelling in math and science, physics. I was going to school Olympics on a regional level, defending honor of my school. I could not enter university. I wanted to become a teacher of physics and math. But because I was not a member of Komsomol, the Communist Party for Youth, they said I could not enter. So
wow.
So I got a technical.
So you literally couldn't go to college to college without being communist.
They told me your kind doesn't come here.
Wow.
Sorry. So I went to technical vocational school on lathing. Then a Bible school opened up in Ukraine, and I managed to finish technical school, go to Bible college. After that, we did evangelism with EHC and started a church in Kiev. So our graduates from Bible college, we did a campaign in the city, offered Bible study. People came, and then eventually people started asking those questions. Can we call ourselves a church? Can we take water baptism? Those are the questions we were waiting for. So we didn't announce that we are starting a church. We just offered to study the Bible. And tens of people eventually formed a new church. So my Christian walk, started from childhood. About age of 9, I knew that I had personal relationship with the Lord, that what I was doing or not doing was not because of my parents, but because I knew that I wanted to please or not displease the Lord. After this upbringing, then Bible school and freedom and evangelism explosion in the 90s, in that post-Soviet era. Eventually, I got an offer to come to US and go to school in America. So my journey in US was really lovely. I went to one school, worked a little bit, went back to school. So business, political science, all in all, I spent 10 years.
I'm a political science guy. Great. Look at that. We have that in common. And business.
Yeah.
I have a degree in political science and one in business.
Well, business, I like business, but my idea was, if I'm not in ministry, maybe I should do well, become well-to-do, so I could sponsor missions. So my dream to go to business school was to become a businessman that can sponsor missions. Right. But political science really turned me on because I could, spit out ideas and provoke thought. So political science I actually enjoyed better. And eventually I felt like, okay, God is telling me to return to Ukraine. So I come back to Ukraine in the beginning of 2005, right after the Orange Revolution and this, moment of hope for Ukraine that maybe we can be different, maybe we go into European civilization instead. And I wanted to be useful, so I went to the central government. I went to Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I said I want to be useful to the central government, and I went through all the background checks, all the interviews, passed foreign languages exams because you had to have at least 2. Back then, I even passed Spanish test.
Wow!
Don't ask me anything now. So I was admitted, enrolled in diplomatic reserve of Ukrainian diplomatic service, and then 2008, Andrei comes to Ukraine to look if HC ministry should be restarted. So I help Andrei with interpreting, connecting him with bishops. Meetings are taking place.
Just in context, Andrei is one of he's no longer in a leadership role with Every Home for Christ, but he is this notorious, beloved leader who was over at that time. He was over this whole part of the world.
He's a historic figure of EHC.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite people on the planet.
So
you heard that. If you're listening to Andrei, wherever you are, if you hear it, you heard it from me.
Yeah, historic. Really, history of EHC, I think, changed with expansion into CIS countries. And at one point, Andrei told our group in CIS, because Toli did so well, now you have, we were able to open ministries in your country. So which made me feel good. But the HC connection was so unexpected and spontaneous that here we are sitting at the table with bishops who decided who will lead HC ministry next. And as this conversation was happening, he was like, and it will be Toli. And later he said, I don't know why I said that. There was some supernatural thing happening. I don't know why I said that. And when he said Toli, all the bishops looked at me like, Toli, huh? What did you do? And I didn't do anything. It was a surprise for me. But I had a immediate understanding that I should not turn down this offer to do ministry. So my whole life was, how do I expand the kingdom? And even should I be in diplomacy or in business, it was also in the context of my serving to the Lord. So instead of just, I was already enrolled and needed to just apply which position should I take. And at that time, I get this offer to do ministry. So I agreed without knowing what I'm gonna do. Then I started praying, Lord, now that you're giving me this, I have no idea what to do with flyers. I don't know what I'm gonna make of it, how to work with it. Please help me get a vision and a big vision and a strategy. How can we see the gospel change a nation? And with the HC ministry, it became possible. But it's like, we could write a book about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing story. I mean, to come from where you came from and just your journey and just the way that your story just unfolded, and then the way that the Lord brought you to Every Home for Christ. And that's a story that when I sit down with people, Every Home for Christ people, that's really common actually. people saying, I don't know how I got here. And yet the Lord's so
it was
used
providential.
you.
It was providential. And later, like when I got this big vision to help shape the culture of the church that will be empowered to change the culture of the nation. And then all of a sudden, within 10 years period, I could see so many dreams come true. Now it's been 15 years that I'm in ministry, but
wow, 15 years.
Yeah. So
I met you pretty early on.
Yes. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yes.
I knew you pretty early on in your journey.
Yeah.
With Every Home, I guess. That's wild.
You made a better career, of course.
Yeah, no, I don't know about that.
I remember when you were just going from one office to another, helping Scott, helping Tim, wherever they will send you, and they send you to Ukraine to see what can be done with prayer in Ukraine.
Yeah. That was fun. Those are good days, good memories. Okay, what I want to talk about for the next however long, is I want to talk a little bit about Ukraine. I want to talk about maybe what the circumstances or the environment is right now in Ukraine. You have this unique view into what's happening in Ukraine because as you lead the ministry in Ukraine, you're connected with thousands of churches. And so you have this broad network that you're connected to. And so what that means is that and I know this because we've had these conversations, but you're constantly getting information about what is happening in Ukraine. I think people listening are intrigued by what is going on in Ukraine. But I want to talk about that context, but I want to talk also about what God's doing within that context as well. So we can talk about the hard part of it, but also we can talk about what God's doing. So when I say that, what comes to your mind as you listen, put your ear to the ground, you listen to the church in Ukraine?
Well, this indeed is the most difficult time for the nation. And it's a time of suffering that goes in every aspect of life. When you don't have electricity, 2 hours you have electricity, then 6 hours you don't have electricity, and how do you organize your life, especially with small children? How do you cook for them?
Yeah, that's just so foreign. I think most people, we just take for granted electricity. I mean, even here in Warsaw, we just take it for granted having.
So you live in a high-rise building, like on the 26th floor.
Yeah.
If you don't have electricity, not only your elevator is not working, but the water pump is not working. So you don't get water, you don't get electricity. You have to walk. And you're stuck there.
You don't even think about that kind of stuff.
Fridge is not working, water heater is not. Yeah. Wow. So that circumstance is really wearing heavily on Ukrainians, and you can see and feel that people are extremely tired. But Ukrainians are not the crybabies when it comes to letting people know how difficult it is, because it's extremely difficult, and Ukrainians are not sharing much of how difficult it is. And imagine daily rocketing, bombing, rockets.
Is that mostly in the east? Is that all across the country?
All of Ukraine, even Lviv, Western Ukraine, Kiev is a constant target. So everybody has an app when there's a siren going off, but also you get a note on a map where you can see the danger zones and what's coming. And so you're constantly living and monitoring your safety. Do you go down in the basement? Where do you go? So when I was looking at the night sky and I would see things coming, because living on the edge of the city, and it's like on a big screen TV with nice panoramic windows. You have a beautiful view from the top, and here something's coming. So you see first heavy gun fire from both sides trying to intercept and gun down. They miss it. Then they send a rocket, which I guess more expensive to chase this rocket. Sometimes it explodes before the building, sometimes behind the building. And at one point, here I was just looking, observing this. Why observing? I don't know. It gave me a sense like I'm in control. But if it was headed towards me, I would not have time to escape. But at least I could see what was happening. So at one point, I was like looking at the palm of my hand, and for each finger, like 4 missiles falling down, burning, hitting homes, breaking the roof, things are burning, and car siren alarms going, and so on. So it's very...
That's surreal.
Yeah, we cannot film that because for security reasons, we don't want our videos to be used, people's filming to be used for confirming or correcting the fire. So it's not filmed, it's not published, but that's the reality that people live with. And with heavy rocketing, like I would be hearing different things like, oh, my friend said, oh, my wife was just in that building, she left, and 9 people died when a rocket landed there. And,
that sounds so
traumatizing. Women's hospital, for example, yeah. So that...
Would you say it's traumatizing?
It is.
Because you live with this constant
fear. It gets
fear.
to the point that when I talk to friends outside of Ukraine, and I would be telling them these stories, they said, "Totally, do you understand that you're not normal anymore?" I said, "But I feel more in control here, that I can see it coming." And like, it's not normal. Do you realize it's not normal? So but what it leads to is your neighbor just closes the window and you jolt and you can't help it. So of course we'll never acknowledge any post-traumatic syndrome,
right?
But it gets to
why?
that
Because
point.
you're Ukrainian, or you
right,
just
right.
Nice.
yeah. We want to be. We
want to be strong.
Tough. Yeah, we are smiley white folks, but we want to be tough.
Yeah.
So this it really gets to you. And imagine what it does to children. You see little children with shaking hands, So they're really traumatized and damaged. Their psychology is damaged for them to have shaky hands.
That's so sad.
And so it becomes a call. What do you do? Do you keep the family in this, or do you send your family out of Ukraine, or so that part is tough. So in the midst of all this suffering, somebody has to say something to people. And it becomes a question what to say. Not everybody is a spiritual giant like Job, who could go through all the suffering that even his wife says, okay, bless God and die. And he was like, no, I know my Redeemer lives. We can't expect. We published those books, we created flyers, like multi-page booklets that help people try to get that perspective, but we can't expect too much that people will be such spiritual giants, be able to go through suffering and not have questions to God like, okay, God, I can't take this, I'm out, don't call me. But people on that decision point, so they either can still turn to God, still pray, still ask for protection, or they can just say, I don't understand this. Why do we have to suffer this? So the role of the ministry, Christian churches, chaplains, volunteers, and churches that we partnered, like we don't have final statistics for this year, but in 23, we had over 2,000 church partners across all of the regions, and a little over 10,000 volunteers who went into every place possible doing preaching and delivering humanitarian aid and praying for people. So prayer materials become most popular, most useful, because amidst of suffering, a believer can come and say, hey, can I pray for you? And then they have something to leave behind and establish connection. So churches in the war zone or close to the war zone have seen very unusual church growth. Because of Christian ministry, what believers are doing, and even though many believers left for the fear of persecutions, if Russians are coming and you're gonna die, so every church would leave at least one deacon in charge, and everybody leaves. So this one deacon becomes our contact when we come with humanitarian aid. So this one person has to rely on the help of the community. So we bring in a truck of food, local people come to get food, they realize there's nobody to divvy up things, and they say, can we help? Can we volunteer? So they start volunteering. Then they get interest. So who are you, and why do you do what you do? And Christians can say, yeah, we serve our neighbor, and this is how we serve the Lord. So these churches have exponentially grown with all new believers that had to be taught how to pray, how to read the Bible, just by this one deacon, and all of a sudden it's a whole new church. So church relocated, and in its place a new church with new people. And we were kind of discussing this, like what will happen if the old folks
came back
and knew how to sing hymnals and knew how to pray and knew how to preach. And what will they say? Will they say, no, you're not doing it right?
That is a wild thing.
They will not be able to say anything, because these new people became believers, got involved in church service, reading the Bible, praying and doing ministry, and all new people. So there is that level of acceptance because of Christian service. And preaching together with humanitarian aid has been the winning formula, how you come to people in suffering.
Do you remember what you got for Christmas last year? Me either. But this Christmas can be different. You can give a gift with eternal impact. When you become a monthly donor with Every Home, your gift of just $20 can carry the love of Christ to 1,200 people around the globe throughout the year. Make this Christmas life-changing. Become a monthly donor today at everyhome.org/give.
It's just a wild reality to think about. People in a war zone and the circumstances that people would go through. I have two questions. My first question is I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be a chaplain right now in the military in Ukraine. And I don't think about that a lot, but in the case of war, what is the role of a chaplain actually?
Love this question because I was considering myself just becoming a chaplain for special up team. But the way I understand the role of the chaplain is to help soldiers locked in deadly combat to remain human. It is not about, please join my church.
Right.
And then you'll be right.
Right.
No, you cannot tell a soldier that is fighting for your survival of a nation, oh, you have to do this, you have to stop drinking, you have to stop smoking. And
it's not the time. It's not the time to talk about that.
This is not that.
You're in war.
Yeah. So, and you cannot affirm any wrongdoing. So what do? You help them keep their sanity and remain human. And this is the big difference. I don't mean to glorify Ukrainian armed forces, but this is a key difference in how things are set up, and we can see the result of it. So in Ukrainian military, now we have chaplains instead of political masterminds. That was in the Soviet tradition. So in Russian military, they still have those political guys who coach people on what to believe in, what they're fighting for. And in Ukrainian military, we don't have the political dogmatic apparatus. We have the Chaplain Institute of Ministry, and it's official. You can be an official chaplain, evangelical, Orthodox Catholic, be an official chaplain or volunteer chaplain anywhere, and you have access to the war. You have access to people stuck in the war or soldiers, and you have a role to play. Bring somebody bread, prayer materials, pray for them, help with some humanitarian things, helping the military.
Just being embedded. I mean, the gift of your presence.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a beautiful picture in a way, and in the worst circumstance, but it's a picture of what it means to be a witness. It's to be embedded with a group of people in suffering, in trauma, to show up, to be Christ to them, like you said, to carry bread to them, and in so doing, all of that to rehumanize, to humanize them. It's just such a. I think something about
just remain human, keep your sanity, don't become an animal. I don't mean to to badmouth animals, but you have to be in the image of Christ, have your dignity as a human, and how you behave matters. So when we hear from soldiers, from military intelligence, from people who know what it's like in the occupied territories, it's pretty much what has been in Bucha and Irpin and what has been known. So things like that continue. The atrocities, not the looting and robbing, but rape and murder and just terrible things. And it's like people are off the leash. They feel that they will not be punished. There will be no repercussions. There's nobody to answer to. They can do whatever they want, and they just go wild. So if a chaplain says, remember that one day you will have to answer for yourself.
What you're doing, yeah.
Even if not before the state, before God, it keeps people behaving in a human dignity.
So interesting to me, just such a unique picture. Okay, where do you think that God is in the midst of suffering? I know that's like $1 million question.
It is because I wish theologians could give a good answer.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is something that people have been asking probably as long as there's been a sense of God, but how would you answer that? If I were living in Ukraine and you came to me and I said, where is he at in the middle of all my suffering? How would you respond to that?
I'm prepared to tell people that I don't have all the answers. I'm prepared to acknowledge that. But when it comes to our encouraging people to turn to God and pray, people who claim to be atheists but agreed that church folks would pray for them will later report that, okay, maybe I cannot be an atheist anymore because of what you did, praying. We can see supernatural things like, the tank is shooting and it's just like going this way, going that way, and it's so close, and it's like a glass cupola, and it was like shot here, shot there, and it was going.
So they're having really spiritual experiences.
Supernatural experiences until he was out of ammunition and turned around and left. So yes, they had a lot of concussion and other side effects, but they survived. And so there are so many stories from soldiers that once they took the advice to pray, so in the midst of fear and suffering, people can still pray and get answers. So maybe the war's not ending, maybe suffering is not ending, but they can still see God intervening on some level. So once people are open to God, ask for God's intervention, they can see how God is answering those.
It's really beautiful. I mean, when you put everything in perspective, what you're saying, suffering, we're talking about Ukraine, we're talking about bombs and missiles raining down upon people. And what I hear you saying is that in the middle of that suffering, if people will turn to God and open themselves to it, that there'll be glimpses of him in unique moments. And I think that's beautiful.
Testimony. It becomes their personal experience, becomes their personal experience of building relationship with God. So the rate of believers growing as a segment of society in Ukraine is exponential. So aside from evangelism that we did so for many years, and it was almost like a tenfold increase. Now at least 4% evangelicals, which was way under 1%. Some estimate more, some estimate maybe it's up to 7%. And Ukrainians turning to God, like if you take the U version, so Poland, Germany have one of the largest segments of Ukrainian displaced persons, like 1 million each. But just in 1 year, you would see downloads by Ukrainians of U version of the Bible increase 250% in Poland, 730% in Germany. So even as people left Ukraine, they still want to find answers of God's intervention in their life.
Wow.
and still looking for that. And I'm glad somebody did that YouVersion
That's
Bible.
right. Thanks, Bobby. That's that's who, Bobby Grinold. So, what about? As you're talking, I'm thinking something. Going back to something you talked about, talking about children. You have a generation of children right now that are growing up in the midst of war. I heard a statistic the other day that 85% of children in Ukraine don't have consistent education. They're experiencing trauma. They're growing up with missiles falling. What do you think? Maybe speak a little bit more to that. Maybe speak to what is going to become of this generation, this young generation in Ukraine.
So many families affected. So some people in the know tell me that we may have 4 million veterans after the war, and how many children will we have? How many families devastated by loss of parents, fathers? If we could work towards that end to help, through children, help the whole family. Because it's, we don't want to lose a generation. We do want them to have a quality of life.
It feels like there's a threat of literally losing this next generation.
It is a threat. So for children who need parents, who need fathers, and now they'll be without fathers.
Right.
In Western Ukraine, you may not see men in villages, like everybody went to war. So it's that massive. Yeah, we don't know exact numbers, but it's massive. The scope of effect on society. A lot of Ukrainians left, like 6 million Ukrainians left during the war from Ukraine, and almost 6 million left before. So 11 to 12 million Ukrainians are outside of Ukraine, maybe 36 or so inside Ukraine. And those who are in Ukraine, they're really affected. When I talk to people, they say, well, we tried both places. In Ukraine, we feel like we were in control. So it's a false, maybe, feeling, because on a distance, you don't exactly have a feel for what it's like. When you see missiles, you go, yeah, here it comes. But it's a false perception. So the children are doing distant learning. So there are schools who are offering via Zoom education, and my children do that. So my children are in school in Norway, and parallel they are continuing with the Ukrainian program.
Wow!
So that they can be in touch with this education and so on. But still, Zoom, everybody has been through Zoom education.
Yeah, nobody loves that.
You know what it's like. It's still limiting. You can say, yes, I've done it, but it's not the same. So children, I would say the immediate danger after the war would be how to minister to the veterans. Imagine a veteran who has spent years in this life or death situation when everything was black and white, coming to civil life and seeing somebody in cafeteria complaining that coffee is not right. He's gonna flip.
Yeah.
So we need to address immediate need with the veterans, but even more important long-term effect. What do we do for children?
It's just war is heinous in the way that
it's just evil.
It's just horrible. It just splits families apart.
Yeah, it is so evil that that's a nice word to describe what is war. It's just evil. Manifestation. It's not about game. It's not a sport. Who wins? Who loses? And it's not about sport. It's a deadly. Combat.
It's horrible. I think I was up early this morning and mostly jet lag, but was up just considering, just reflecting on my time here in Poland, and we've been in a couple different locations, and just hearing stories about what's going on in Ukraine and just the challenges and the suffering that people are going through. And I think as an American, it's really hard to just wrap your mind around what people are going through. And, you know, it just is. It feels like two different worlds. Yeah. I mean, I think you get that. I mean, you lived in America long enough to, you know, just the distance that there is. And I just want, you know, just to commend you for your heart to run into the, you know, to throw yourself into serving people. It says in the Gospels that Christ said, I'm among you as one who serves. And I can just see you, I know who you are, that you've given yourself to serving people, like humanitarian aid. I mean, van load after van load, bus load after bus load of aid coming into Ukraine, and through your efforts, and you've raised money, and you're preaching the gospel and all of the things that you're doing. So I just want to commend you for all that you're doing. And I think that I hope that this conversation, for someone listening, especially in the West, I hope it gives them just a little bit more of a sense of what part of the world is going through, even if it's radically different than what we're going through in the West. It's troubling. I mean, even talking to you, I've been talking to you for the last couple of days, and it's just troubling. What this part of the world is going through it's traumatizing. You can feel it. You can feel this whole area, Eastern Europe, is just going through just an evil, traumatic event that's going to be generations are going to be dark walking times. Through. Yeah. It is dark times. But I love what you're saying, that there's glimpses. Yes. There's just glimpses of the Lord in the midst of suffering in a way that...
And people notice that.
Yeah, that's right.
That opens doors, like, yes, I want to rely on God.
That's right. Well, let's end with this conversation. Let's end with this question. I ask it every time, Toli. Yeah. I ask, what does it mean to carry Christ? And I want you to answer that specifically in regards to Ukraine. What does it mean to carry Christ in Ukraine today?
Yeah, I guess it's an essay question.
Yeah, that's right.
But
I love putting people on the spot too.
I grew up in a context where we were taught to live such exemplary life because we are letters that are read. Okay, so how you go through life, what you do, what you don't do, how you behave, people watch you. People, if they know you're a Christian, they will watch you to see is your life any different? Is your value system any different? Or your, So when you're in, let's say you're a chaplain, you have to let them, the soldiers, see that you're different in how you deal with things. So by your example, by what you do, and people are watching you, they're very, very sensitive. You can't just come and say, "Oh, here's what you need," and put on this preacher voice and preach them. No, you can't. You can't. You don't want to be shot. You can't. You just have to be real. And yes, it's tough. Yeah, yes. And so you acknowledge life as is, but you, by your example, you show a different processing mode, how you deal with this. And people watching you make you the letter that is read.
That's right.
So I would say carrying Christ is you have to be this, the one who carries the light, the one who shows that he has been affected and changed by this. So we become carriers and agents of hope and love, and so we bring Christ with everything we do. So even, if people are bickering online, what do? Do you behave different, or you join the game because what do you do on social media? You just insult each other. No, you don't, right? Because you're different. You show maybe a different discourse. Yeah? And even those kind of things are noted. So I think I would, to me, that phrase would mean I'm the letter that is read. So I have to be to a certain quality that people would see, okay, so he has something that's worth noting because I can see how he's going through life. It's helping him. Maybe I should take note of that. Maybe I should learn how he does it.
It's just a really beautiful, beautiful answer. And it seems like it just wraps up everything that we're just talking about. And from chaplaincy and just the gospel going forth. So totally appreciate your conversation, your honesty. And again, I just want to commend you.
I'm so happy. It's been such a pleasure and such a delightful moment.
You bet. Well, you're easy to talk to, so.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks, dude. Appreciate it.
Hope to see you again.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Thank you for joining us today on the Redeeming Missions podcast. If you like what you heard, we encourage you to visit everyhome.org/redeemingmissions to find all past episodes and learn more about Every Home and joining the efforts to carry Christ to everyone, everywhere, in every generation. Echoing Patrick, Christ with us, Christ before us, Christ behind us, Christ in us. Let us carry Christ to our world. Until next time.